Hello, this is Strategy Miscellany, and this is Terra Invicta, both a new game release and a new game for the channel. Terra Invicta is an interesting grand strategy game that came out just recently that's kind of really two games in one. You've got these different factions on Earth, and then you have the entire solar system with building a space-based economy and building spaceships to fight each other or the aliens, because that's how this game starts. Is basically it's today. I think technically the start date is later in October, but essentially it's present day, and an alien ship has crashed on Earth. There's no living aliens inside it that we can see anyway, but basically first contact in a sense has happened, and all these different factions spring up to essentially dispute what we should do about this. So right now we only have the modern scenario. In the future, there's also going to be a Cold War scenario and one starting in like 2070. The solar system, you can, if your computer can't handle the full solar system, you can do a smaller one. I'm going to try with all the space objects. And you can also reduce the number of factions involved if you don't want all of them there. There's 8 because one of them is the aliens. So the factions we have, essentially, there's 5 of them that follow sort of a spectrum in how to respond to the aliens. And then there's 2 that are kind of off doing their own thing. So basically, most radically opposed to the aliens would be Humanity First. They're sort of the stereotypical Imperium of Man, xenophobic faction that, the aliens have come to our system. They clearly mean us harm. We should destroy them all. And even we should be willing to, destroy the Earth, return it to a cinder, if that's what's necessary to stop the aliens. Then, slightly more moderate than them, we have the Resistance, who was the faction you could play in the demo mode that they released earlier. Although it had no save, and you could only go about 7 years into the campaign in game time. And basically, they agree that the aliens most likely mean us harm, and from the early events, they're probably right. But they're less radical about it, and they don't think we should waste a lot of time punishing human collaborators or be willing to, launch nuclear strikes on Earth in order to defeat them. Unless that's absolutely necessary, maybe they might agree with that. So then, in sort of the middle, we have the Academy, who start out as sort of an academic faction, as you might expect from the name, and basically want to convince the aliens that we are legitimate as a party to talk to on equal terms. They're willing to fight the aliens if necessary, but really they want to come to a negotiated settlement where we can learn from each other, and they want to, bootstrap us up to the alien tech level through researching their technology and that sort of thing. Then we have the Protectorate, who basically are in some ways like a more pessimistic resistance, you could say. They think that any attempt to fight the aliens off is going to fail. The best we can do is come to some sort of truce with them where we become a protectorate or a client state of the aliens. And basically we have to appease them. And really, I can see this being a totally logical option. The aliens came from another solar system. Their technology way outnumbers ours. The best we can do maybe is to build ourselves up in a position where we can make it too difficult for them to directly conquer us and come to some sort of deal. That doesn't exactly seem what the Protectorate is trying to do, though, from what I've read on the forums. I'm not sure if I understand the Protectorate's position entirely. It seems like it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then, most radically for the aliens, we have the Servants, who basically believe the aliens are star gods and that we should submit to whatever they want to do, that they're the superior species, essentially. So those are kind of the 5 along a spectrum. And then we have 2 that are kind of doing their own thing. We have the Initiative, which is basically just a bunch of corporate interests trying to make a lot of money off the whole situation. So basically doing what they were doing before the aliens showed up, except for now they can sell you, I suppose, more Ancient Alien shows on TV and that sort of thing. And then we have Project Exodus, which basically says we can't defeat the aliens here in system. We should actually try and go out to another star system. How they're going to stop the aliens from following them there if they want to, I don't know. Honestly, Project Exodus again seems like they wanted to do this anyway, and this is just kind of their excuse. And so I haven't seen anyone on YouTube play as the servants and basically work fully in service of the aliens to help them conquer Earth. And I think it would be kind of fun to try and play as the bad guys and see what it looks like from their side of the hill. I tried in the demo as the Resistance and never got very far because the game wouldn't let you save and only let you go 7 years ahead anyway. I tried a game as the Protectorate, but my strategy on Earth, my Earth-based strategy of which nations to try and influence, just wasn't very good. And I ended up way behind. So this will be the first time, hopefully, where I have a decent chance of actually winning the campaign. It is easier as the servants because you're receiving a little behind-the-scenes help from the aliens. And so let's give it a start, and I'll show you what it looks like.
Weird Stars answered. The day we learned we were not alone. As a familiar sun rose on an unfamiliar universe, some of us saw wondrous possibility, and others, existential danger. The astronomers had insisted that the bright streak in the sky was no natural phenomenon. Most of us didn't really believe them until it burned through our atmosphere and crashed in a remote region, leaving only wreckage and uncertainty. In our ignorance, we fractured, taking refuge in our most primal emotions. Each of us saw what we wanted to see. Rapture, fear, revelation, lies, and at the nexus, salvation. We entreat our earthly forms to its cleansing flame, praying that we will be found worthy. For only by accepting we are servants may we ascend, and only by excising the doubt within and around us may we be brought into its holy embrace.
So there's your intro video for the servants. And you can see the aliens have crashed in Novosibirsk out in Siberia. Right over there. There's Lake Baikal. There's far Siberia, kind of. And so we will go investigate.
And to you, Superior. The Council has appointed you as our acting representative and military commander.
And so, yes, they want us to investigate, of course. Now, some folks will say that it's a better idea to basically start trying to control countries right away than to send anybody to investigate the alien UFO. But from kind of a role-playing sense, I feel like you've got to go investigate.
Ready for orders.
And so here's our two people on our council so far. We have this activist from Brazil who's got a lot of persuasion, which is good. And she can do some useful different things. She can control nations, very important early on, do public campaigns. She can also inspire other counselors to try and increase their loyalty.
What's the op?
And then we have Jody here, who is a scientist who can actually do enhancements to our research and is also okay at investigation. She can control nations. And she can also investigate alien activity, which is what I'm going to have her go do.
Headed there now.
And so she goes right
Your
off.
orders?
But before I talk to this second counselor, I'm actually going to recruit a third. You can see we have 50 influence here. And some of these people only cost 30. Well, I guess I got a bad batch and they all cost 60, so we'll have to wait till the next turn to actually hire somebody new. That's okay. Alright, so here's Milena here. And her, we can start trying to control a country. Now, there's a lot of different strategies you can use, and when I tried as the Protectorate, I basically tried to start from South and Central America, and it just wasn't enough of a good power base to really get things going. You know, none of these countries have an established space infrastructure, and it just didn't work. So I'm going to try something slightly different this time. See, the problem is the really big countries you can't break into right away. Like China here, 0%. Pretty sure the US would also give me 0%. Yeah. And so you have to kind of crack into them by getting through to their neighbors. And the other problem is we only have 114 total control points we can use right now. So if we try to take over a bunch of countries, we'll be way over that limit. The other factions will be able to counter us. So what I'm going to try here is I'm actually going to start, although it seems a little odd, with North Korea and attempt to basically influence the ruling elite there.
Putting our people in place.
Because being adjacent to other countries helps you control them, and so I can go from North Korea to South Korea. And eventually I can diplomatically unify the Korean peninsula. And then I can also take Japan here. They have a lot of income, a decent population. I think they're pretty close to building an army. And they also have a space program. North Korea has an extremely rudimentary space program. And also has one barrage of nuclear weapons available, which will allow us to have a bit of a deterrent if anybody tries to counter us. And so that'll be sort of our start here in East Asia. And then I'll also start taking some countries around India in an effort to eventually control India. India has its own space program, it's got its own armies, it's got a very large population, and so with some investments in economic growth, we can make it a major power. I mean, it's already a major power. We can make it essentially a superpower. And in the long run, I'll want to control the countries around it, possibly do some diplomatic unifications, which I'll show you how that works. And then the third goal I'll have is basically a few small, wealthy countries around the world, often resource-producing ones. So, for example, Norway would be a good one. They produce oil and are very rich. Let's see. I was thinking of Equatorial Guinea because I know there's a lot of oil there, but it looks like they've combined them into a larger region here. But that's an option. Singapore, another option. Or, for example, the Gulf states here. And basically what we'd be doing is basically just exploiting these countries by running spoils. Morally rather questionable, but we are in service of the aliens, so our morals are already pretty questionable. And we can use that money to basically purchase organizations and also build up our countries that we actually want to stay in for the long term through direct investment. So that's sort of my short-term Earthbound strategy. Now, as I said earlier, the game is sort of a two-part thing, because here's Earth, and then if we zoom out, there's the moon, the Lagrange points. There's an entire solar system out there. Now, most of these way out here Kuiper Belt objects we're probably not going to end up going to. Both because they're really far away and because that's where the aliens start. And even if we're the servants, I feel like they'd probably still blow us up. But we've got, Mars and Phobos and Deimos, I think. Yeah, there they are. Deimos, Phobos, Mars. We'll have to send prospector probes out there basically first to see what kind of resources they have. Mercury, all these different Lagrange points, Venus, and then of course the asteroid belt. There's a ton of asteroids. Some big famous ones like Ceres, Vesta. Interemnia was in Children of a Dead Earth, actually. That's where the space mutiny happened. And then a lot of just little ones here. I think there's a few near-Earth asteroids, too. Let's see. There's Eros. Yep. That would be one to look into. Although it doesn't look like it has any water or volatiles, so not great. But it might have some noble metals. Or here's Kruthny. That's another classic near-Earth asteroid featured in some science fiction. And so, yeah, in the long run, we're going to have to be dealing with the solar system as a economic sphere and as a battlefield. Although with us, we will, at least in theory, be fighting on the side of the aliens and against other human factions like Humanity First that want to destroy the aliens. So yeah, we can even land on Titan. It has a lot of volatiles, of course, because it basically rains hydrocarbons there. But for now, we're essentially stuck on Earth. So let's go back to Earth. And I'll go ahead and confirm assignments, and I'll run time forwards here. So normally, at least early in the game, you'll be running at 5 speed here, letting everything spin around real fast. Those two tracks are the International Space Station and the Tiangong Space Station, which are both controlled by different factions. And I'm going to go ahead and pick the officers and operators here because I need base ops income. Because we basically make 0 ops income by default, whereas we make a little bit of money and a little bit of influence by default. So I'm going to pick these two. Or that one option. And every nation gains a little bit of cohesion because we all realize that
Recon
there's aliens
complete.
out there. We investigate the aliens, don't find very much, but learn a little bit about xenology, which will help our research going forwards. And we gain a little bit of influence in science from doing so. The next step is to research alien signatures to try and figure out why the aliens crashed and how to find them. All that sort of
Our
thing.
supporters are in place.
And we have taken control of North Korea. Seems maybe a little easier than you'd think it should be, but I guess we made some sort of deal with the ruling classes there. So now I'm going to start setting up this nation to be a little bit less of a basket case. So I'll go ahead and let it spend a little bit on boost. I'm not going to have it do any funding for me because I'll have richer nations to do that better. I'll spend a little bit on military to try and modernize its army there. It has one starting army, but it's still industrial age. It's basically T-34s and such. Unity I don't have to worry about. It's very much controlled by the ruling party. Knowledge would be good. Welfare would be good. That will help equalize things because right now basically the ruling elite controls everything. And we need to work on economic growth. So that's my plan to start with North Korea there. And you can see I do have access to one nuclear barrage, which I can use if someone declares war on me. So at the start of the game, it basically goes 1 week at a time. And then it lets you start new assignments at the end of each week. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, is recruit a 3rd counselor, now that I have enough influence to do so. And I want to pick somebody who can do things that my first 2 can't do. Although high persuasion is basically always good at this point. At the beginning, you're kind of trying to lock down... you're trying to kind of lock down control of countries. I want someone who's able to decrease unrest, ideally. I have people who can increase unrest. Okay, so this woman here from China, she can do a lot of good things. Crackdown, purge, coup, increase unrest, stabilize nation. She has no administrative skill, which is not great, because that's useful for controlling different organizations, which will give you bonuses. So let me look at a couple others here. Okay, so this guy can do some useful things too. He only has one admin though. You know, this guy can stabilize nations, and he's part of a government, which is good for taking on different organizations, which will be useful in the future. And he has decent administration. I'm going to recruit Bansari here for the cause. And now I have 3 operatives I can do missions with. Now, another thing I want to do, if I have the influence, is I want to take North Korea here. And I want to stop rivaling South Korea. We're going to start sort of leaning towards peace with our friends to the south. Because eventually I'm going to want to take control of South Korea also and align the two. Okay, looks like I'm not allowed to change that until 29th of December, probably because I just took over the country. So we'll have to wait a little bit. That's okay. So now another thing I should show you is this global intelligence panel over here. So we can see the different factions. Right now we don't really know anything about the other factions. With espionage, we'll learn more over time. And there's also this here showing global public opinion right now. Most people are undecided. Population on Earth and in space. Prices if you sell space resources. If you sell space resources to Earth. Or if you're taking Earth resources up to space. You also would need boost capacity to do the latter. You can see the Russia-Ukraine war is unfortunately still going on. And you can also see here global warming going on and causing a negative effect to global GDP. In the long run, there are some different sort of technological changes you can do. Also, focusing a country on welfare will reduce this. Focusing a country on spoils will increase it highly. Focusing on economic growth will increase it slightly. And you can also deal with you can also deal with global warming in the most galaxy-brained way by starting a nuclear war, launching a bunch of stratospheric aerosols into the air, and causing a massive negative temperature anomaly with that. Now, if you cause too much of that, you'll end up with a nuclear winter and all sorts of other problems. But as the servants, that may not be the worst thing, because, I mean, it weakens humanity and makes us more vulnerable to the aliens. So what I am going to do from now on, because this game is quite, I wouldn't call it slow-paced, but I would say it takes a long time. It's a long play time. And to try and make it more interesting, what I'm going to do is basically only provide quarterly updates. So the next update would be at January 1st of 2023, or right around beginning of January of 2023. Unless something really interesting happens in the meantime, in which case I will pause and mention that. There will probably be a few more of those early in the game, because it'll be the first time we've seen specific things. And then later in the game, there will be less of those as we get more used to what's going on. So, I will go ahead and start confirming assignments. And I will see you, barring events before then, in January of 23.
Ready for my mission.
So here's an event. The UN Security Council meets. We can choose to either completely remain in the shadows, quietly steer some support to us, or deliver an official manifesto. The problem with that one is that everybody knows about you, and you become a target for the other factions. I'm just going to quietly steer support towards us.
Our only hope is to understand
And you find out some of the
what
other
the
factions
aliens
exist.
want with us and determine how to satisfy them without losing our independence.
So here we have the Protectorate. They're the only ones who decided to reveal themselves in public. Oh, and I should mention, this is our research and development screen. And it typically makes sense to spread out your research. You do want these global priorities to complete. If you actually spend the most in any of these global priorities, then you get to pick the next one. And also, we don't have that much interesting to research right now. I mean, alien signatures, that'll be pretty quick to research. We'll go ahead and spend our money on that, or our research points on that. Eventually, we'll get to do two more personal engineering projects or research projects, as opposed to these ones that are kind of collective. But spreading out your research points gives you a bonus to all of them. You can see here 0.48 is my research distribution bonus, whereas my research is 2.9 research daily. So I'm getting something like a 15 or 20% bonus from that, from spreading it out. So here you can see we've detected an enemy counselor in Moscow. We can try and investigate them to either make contact or even try to imprison or assassinate them once we have enough information. For now, I'm going to hold off on that because I'm just going to focus on building up my own organization for now.
We believe we can join them as brothers and sisters if we only convince them we are worthy.
Okay, and now we've encountered the Academy. So we've achieved some level of knowledge that they exist. Alright, so here we've researched alien signatures so that we can start figuring out where the aliens are showing up. And now we want to actually investigate activity of these alien abductions to see what's going on with that. I mean, clearly they're doing it for our best interests. They're angels from the heavens, and they're bringing us the message of peace. But we would like to find out what exactly is going on. So here we get to select an advisory team. I'm going to pick this one that gives me bonus points for boost, and so that we can get more stuff off planet more quickly when we need to. Ah, there's an alien fleet showing up in low Earth orbit. I can take a look at it. So here is one alien ship. Kind of a weird view. But if I turn around, it should have the Earth there. Oh, I think it's transiting to Earth orbit, but it's actually still a long way out. Yeah, we picked it up as it's still coming out from out in the belt. But it'll get to low Earth orbit in another couple weeks. It's going pretty fast. You know, alien technology and all that. And here another UFO has crashed in Russia. Well, I suppose it is the largest country in the world by land area, so it's not too weird that both of them would show up there. But we'll have to go investigate.
It has always been true that we must leave the cradle if our species is to survive. If these aliens are indeed hostile, the time to go is now.
And here we have Project Exodus. Meeting them.
We must not only defend human lives from the aliens, we must ensure those lives remain worth living.
And here we have the Resistance.
They are not life forms or xenosapiens. They are demons incarnate. They and the traitors who support them will face our judgment.
And here we have Humanity First, probably our biggest rivals besides the aliens themselves, but they're kind of on our side. These are our biggest rivals in the campaign. Have to keep an eye on them. Alright, so first quarterly report. We've taken control of Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Bangladesh, basically in order to make it easier to crack into India. Oh, and the Himalayan states here, Nepal and Bhutan. By having all these neighbors, we should be able to crack into India, although we may have to abandon control of a couple of them in order to have enough control points to hold on to India. I don't think Japan is going to be feasible at this point in the game, just due to the number of control points it's going to cost to hold on to India. The Korean Peninsula is still a little bit disputed. We've got these other two factions with their foot in the door, Protectorate and Humanity First. We've got to root them out so we can have full control of South Korea. And around the world, let's see, the Russians appear to be winning over here. We'll see what happens with that. The Academy is taking Great Britain. France is being fought over. It sort of becomes the center of the European Union, and so it's important. The US, I'm guessing nobody has control into. And a lot of small countries around the world are getting claims put on them as the world's factions jockey for influence. I've been trying to get a point into Oman here and have not yet succeeded, basically to siphon off some oil money. So, that's the state of the game as of January. In terms of research, we're starting to research some different space technologies. Clandestine cells, I'm researching so that I can have a 5th counselor. And I haven't really been able to augment my counselors yet. They haven't gotten enough experience points yet. I'll show you that when that happens. So I will move on, and I will report back at beginning of April, next quarterly report.
Every circumstance is an opportunity. Our test is to recognize and seize it.
And here we have the initiative, basically entirely out to make money. Not really sure how that works if the aliens conquer us all, but I guess we'll see what happens. So after the first 5 months or so, it basically, instead of having weekly turns, goes to having bi-weekly turns for mission assignments. And also, I think they are approximately twice as effective for the ones where that makes sense, like reducing unrest. So, just a little change of the game pace, nothing huge. So, here we are, April 1st. We are beginning public campaigns in India to get more political support so that we can start to take some of these control points and eventually take these away from Project Exodus. I've been running stabilization operations in Myanmar, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. In South Korea, we are trying to take this point away from Humanity First here. We've done a crackdown on them, and now we're trying to actually switch it here. And then we have full control over Oman, and we're running spoils on them, basically exploiting the country's economy and skimming off the top. We're doing the same thing in Portugal. It may not be an oil producer, but it's a fairly wealthy country that's fairly small and tends to be forgotten about by the AI a little bit. And we're trying to do the same thing in the Gulf states, but we're having a little trouble cracking in. And so that's where we are right now. That's actually where I'm going to end this video, this first episode. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great day. And we'll get back to you next time as we continue into 2023.